Am I the a-hole for punishing my family by no longer doing birthdays, holidays, vacations because my dad screwed me and my wife over? When my wife and I were talking about getting married, my dad said that he would give us a down payment for a home. We were thrilled and kept that in mind. We would be able to afford a good starter home with his help, and we scrimped and saved to add to it. Except apparently he meant a sum of money good for a down payment for a house near us where the cost of living is low. He did not ever mean a down payment for a home in Colorado, where my wife and I have lived since we were in college. He said he thought I would be smart enough to realize that we'd need to move somewhere with a lower cost of living than Colorado. He keeps saying move to a cheaper city. Our lives are here. Our friends, our jobs, our hobbies. You can't exactly leave your house and be up on top of a 14,000-foot peak in 6 hours where my family is. I told him that we had never talked about moving back there, and we never would. That we would rather be stuck renting for a while longer than be stuck somewhere we didn't want to be, and the move to a cheaper city wouldn't work for us. He said so be it and gave us the amount, and that was that. I expressed gratitude and thanked him for the money. It is still towards the goal. Well, because of this shift in our finances, we have had to make a lot of changes to save up the rest of the money. We have had to cut out vacations, birthday gifts, holidays, etc. We won't be traveling home for a few years. At our current rate, we should have an okay down payment by the end of next year, 2025. My dad confronted us about this because we won't come for a summer break trip and told me that I was being a selfish, entitled brat because I hadn't gotten my way. That I was essentially punishing the rest of the family because we assumed what his gift would be. I told him that I was grateful for the amount he gave us, but that it means we do need to buckle down and save every penny if we want to be able to afford a house anytime soon. Even townhouses around us are easily over $400K, and that's for the sketchy ones. But is my dad right? Am I the a-hole? Edit to add FAQ. There was no amount formally discussed. He said a down payment, and that was that. For my siblings, he paid for college. He paid cash in full for my sister's house. It was $317,000. He did not pay for my college. They are invited to come here anytime, but believe it should be me to go there because I am the one who moved. No, we do not go out to eat, avocado toast, Starbucks, cable, etc., etc.
Why would you assume your dad knows how much house prices are where you live and how much a down payment would be there? Obviously, the offer he gave would be based on knowledge of where he is currently living. As for never used to think he was manipulative, but after speaking to my wife. Could it be that your wife is muddying the water? I think any gift given with no strings attached shouldn't be looked down upon. Your use of language, "screwed me over," is awfully telling in this situation. You expected more and are upset about this, and that's your answer, plain and simple.
He works with real estate and has been out here working on real estate deals in the past. He knows what the housing market is like out here. We've also just had conversations over the past few years about it and our plans. When he bought my sister her house, we talked about how much that house would go for out here, what we were looking for down the road, etc.
Why don't you do some critical thinking and maybe ask them to come visit you this time? I don't know, you guys are both a-holes in this situation. Y'all need to communicate better and find a resolution.
We have told them that since we can't come out there and they have plenty of disposable income, they are welcome to come out here. My mom would love to come see us, and we'd be happy to have her. My dad is being stubborn and saying that they're the parents, so we need to go see them.
Not the a-hole. I live on the West Coast and my family is on the East Coast. It is so expensive now to travel. People always expect you to go to them because you're an a-hole for leaving, but it's really not fair. If you want to save for a house, I get not wanting to visit. They can always visit you or offer to help pay travel expenses if they really want to see you.
He gave you money, accepting that you would be putting it toward a house where you live now rather than near him. And you respond by, essentially, cutting him out of your life and tightening your belt. You are the a-hole.
Oh, no. He 100% assumed that when the amount he was giving us wasn't enough for a down payment in Colorado, we would somehow change our minds and buy a home there instead. He still has not accepted that we aren't moving back and brings it up in every single conversation.
You are the a-hole for framing it as your dad screwing you over. He offered you a down payment for a home. You assumed it would be a certain amount. It wasn't, but he still gave you a generous gift, and now you describe that generous gift as screwing you over. Also, while you're under no obligation to go on family trips, to cut out any visits to them for a few years after your dad gave you this generous gift because it wasn't as much as you were expecting sends a message, whether you mean it to or not.
Am I the a-hole for repeatedly calling someone stupid after they accuse me of lying about my children's ethnicity? My husband is Dominican and I'm Irish. Our kids look like him in terms of facial features, but they inherited my pale skin. Our son has his father's dark hair, but my daughter's is borderline dark blonde. Genes are weird, what are you gonna do? Both my kids and myself have my husband's last name, which is a popular Dominican last name. There have been times we get looks when people hear our last name and my husband isn't around. But it's never been too bad and usually, I shrug it off. Due to my husband's work schedule, he's rarely at school events. So, most people just know me. There's another little girl in my daughter's class with the same last name as us. Her mom also volunteers often. When we met, she flat out said, "You're not Dominican." I said, "No. My husband and kids are." She said, "But your last name is X." I said, "Yeah, because it's my husband's." She pointed out how pale they are. I just said genes are weird. But almost every time we see each other, she brings it up somehow, making comments about how pale the kids are. Finding it weird they don't know Spanish, my husband didn't learn growing up so they don't know it either. I just let it roll off because while it's weird, I'm not about to get into a pissing contest. The teacher asked the kids to make collages about their cultures. My daughters had stuff related to being a Dominican and stuff related to being Irish. They had a whole culture day where parents were invited. The mom of the other little girl saw my daughter's collage and rolled her eyes, thankfully not in front of my daughter. There were no other kids around at the time as they were getting food. It was just parents looking at the collages. I asked what her problem is. She said I'm not a real Dominican. I said I never claimed to be. She said my kids aren't either and that my husband is probably only a little Dominican and we're claiming a culture that's not ours. I was dumbfounded. All I could ask was, "Are you stupid?" She said there was no need to be defensive. Finally, I had enough, pulled out my phone and showed her pictures of myself with my husband and the kids. She stared at it for a moment and mumbled an apology. I said, "Yeah, maybe research how genes work so you don't make yourself look stupid in front of a bunch of third graders." She got teary-eyed and walked away. I got the stink eye from some other parents which I ignored. When I told my husband later, he said calling her stupid repeatedly, when she already apologized, was an a-hole move. Am I the a-hole?
I mean, it sounds like she'd been harassing you for a while over this and maybe more than a little prejudice. Gatekeeping an entire culture? What if your husband didn't look Dominican enough for her? There comes a point where you stop being nice. Maybe you did take it a bit far, but repeated snide remarks wear a person down until they snap. Not the a-hole because it feels justified. Genetics are super weird. Reminds me of a story I was listening to the other week about a family with only albino children and the father blamed the mother for it, called her all sorts of awful names, had an affair, ran off with the mistress he knocked up, who had an albino baby.
Not the a-hole. She said there was no need to be defensive. She just called you a fake Dominican appropriating another culture and suggested you were lying about your husband and kids' ethnicity. Yeah, there is a need to be defensive because she was attacking you. You'd probably get less stink eye if you said it politely without insults, but it's not like she didn't deserve it.
Not the a-hole. Why would she be so pressed about someone else's culture, or culture they claim to be? She was rude and basically harassing you on more occasions than one. She wasn't entitled to an explanation, let alone having to show her a picture of your family for her to be convinced. I think you were more than patient with her and definitely not the a-hole. Hate to break it to her, but she isn't the only Dominican to walk this earth, and not all Dominicans are gonna look like what her mind accepts as one.
Am I the a-hole for calling my daughter-in-law a manipulator? My son 20 has dated this girl 20 for 4 years. First problem was that it was a secret. I only found out because this girl's parents did and demanded my son marry her. He had slept with her and their religion called for it. I was mad at my son. Why would he get with a girl from a whole different lifestyle? Why hide it from his family since now he's gotten into this huge mess? I was mad at the girl. If she knew her parents are extremely religious and will react this way, why not be with a man in her religion? In the end, the girl moved to her home country. I did feel for her. She was right at the age that she needed to spread her wings and go to college or work, not sent to a third world country with no opportunities. My son was upset. He became more closed off, and I heard him crying at night in his room. He started work once he was 18, and I barely saw him since he would work late. Later, the girl came back, and the two of them were always on call. I couldn't get a single conversation with my son without her on his phone waiting for him to finish up our conversation so he can go back to her. Son said she worked, but I highly doubted it. They were talking 24/7. What job lets their workers text all the time? This girl also never sleeps because they would stay up late talking. It was my idea she move in, and now I regret it. My son was never affectionate, but with her, he is. They're always on top of each other. The two are never apart. He always laughs and hugs her. Not once have I ever seen him like this, even with me. She was making him go all out when they were just starting to be boyfriend and girlfriend. She always cooks the same thing. She won't make different meals. If she does, it is from her culture. She never ate my cooking, and then my son also stopped eating my cooking. When I tell him I cooked for him, he tells me that his girlfriend will cook for him instead. I feel him getting distant, and I can't help but feel like she's the reason. He was never like this. I try to fix it. I have this friend who gives massages. My son works hard, so I invite him to get a massage, and he said no. His girlfriend gives him great massages and would rather get one from her instead of paying for it. I can't do anything with him anymore. And the main thing is the two of them eloped. No regard to his family or mother. It all happened out of the blue. I feel like he got pressured into marrying. That she told him to do all of these things. I told my son that she is a manipulator who controls him. Everything has to be her way on her time. She is forcing him to treat her like a wife and marry her when they are too young and should be taking it slow. I feel like she is separating him from his family because she no longer has her family. My son told me that he's putting her first in his life now, and I need to respect and stop bad-mouthing her or keep the comments to myself. It's like another person was talking through my son. Not once has he ever been like this. It's like I don't even know him anymore.
OP, you haven't listed anything abnormal. Your son merely moved to the next stage of his life, and you must accept it. You are the a-hole.
I know my son is moving on to another stage in life, and I am struggling to accept it. But to me, this is very abnormal. I have been in many relationships, and none of them had moved this fast like theirs. I always had my own life apart from my partner's. But these two act like if they aren't by each other's side all the time, something horrible will happen. They never have a break from each other, and they tell each other everything. Whatever I tell my son goes straight to her. To me, this is very abnormal.
I'm sorry your son is more affectionate with his girlfriend than his mom. That must be really hard to find out.
Oh, you are the a-hole. Seems like he's actually setting boundaries and you don't like it. You don't seem to be respecting that either. This isn't something you fix. It's not going to go back to the way it was with your son, totally under your thumb. You have to either adapt and keep your opinions to yourself and maybe salvage a relationship with your son, or in a few years he's going to cut you off and you'll be claiming you have no idea why and it's all daughter-in-law's fault and being racist about it.
How am I being racist about it?
You're mad at her for belonging to a different religion and cooking her own cultural foods.
Am I the a-hole for being honest to my brother about why he is being excluded? My 34 female brother, 26 male, told me that he is upset because he feels like everyone ignores him and excludes him out of things. He told me that no one ever invites him to any events. He said that no one calls or texts him. He was upset that he found out that all of us siblings have a group chat, and he's not a part of it. He also told me at work how some of his colleagues ignore him and don't invite him out to events outside of work hours. I had to be honest with my brother about why he's in this position. I basically told him that he is essentially excluding himself and that his behavior is the reason why he's being left out. He spends the majority of his free time in his room on his laptop. He hardly leaves the house besides just going to work. He doesn't have any other hobbies or interests. He doesn't make an effort himself to engage with people and reach out to people. He isolates himself from everyone. I told him you can't expect people to include you and reach out to you when you hide in your room all day and you don't make an effort yourself to engage with people. My brother got upset when I told him this, but I felt like he needed to hear it because it's the truth.
Edit you are the a-hole because he was on the chat and you guys made a new one because he didn't talk often enough for you. Info, why isn't he on the group chat? He's a sibling and could be there even if he's standoffish and not responsive?
That is a good question. The siblings group chat, the brother is excluded. OP, why? I feel bad for your brother. OP is being mean and so are the other siblings.
Makes me wonder if the brother truly doesn't have hobbies or if OP just never took the time to discover them.
We had a group chat before, but he never was active in it.
But why make a new one? It's fair to point out that he doesn't involve himself, but remaking one to exclude him is crappy too.
They probably made a new one to talk shit about him.
Am I the a-hole for kicking my son out of my house after he said bad things about me to his friends? I, 40 male, have a son, 18 male, who was accepted to college. I was very happy because I didn't have that opportunity. I dropped out of school to help my family of 8 siblings. Today, I work in a managerial position without a diploma. When my son got accepted, I asked him to gather the necessary documents for his college registration. Since I'm not tech savvy, I asked an employee to help with the registration. My son kept making excuses about the documents, saying some could only be obtained online. On the last day for registration, he gave me the documents, but the college website wouldn't accept the login credentials. I tried calling him, but he didn't answer. When I got home, he confessed he hadn't been accepted and had lied to me out of fear. I felt deeply disappointed. I had been telling everyone about his acceptance and working overtime to buy him a car as a gift. In anger, I told him he was a disappointment, which I regret. The next day, I wanted to apologize and discuss his future options, but he was out with friends. I used our shared computer and found a conversation where he and his friends insulted me and called his friends his real family. It seemed like he left the computer on for me to see. When he got home, I yelled at him and told him he had until the end of the year to get a job and move out. He cried, saying I was overreacting, but I stood firm. Now, his grandparents are urging me to change my mind, but I feel justified. I've always tried to be a good father, and this betrayal hurts deeply. So, am I the a-hole?
You are the a-hole. Don't ask later on, why doesn't my son talk to me anymore? This is the reason. If my child ever told me she was scared to tell me something, I'd be falling over myself trying to make it up to her, not kick her out. You betrayed the love your son has had for you. Do better as a dad.
Exactly. His son needs support and OP instead is taking everything personally like he's the main character.
You just keep making the same mistake over and over. He is so afraid of disappointing you, he makes up a ridiculous lie that he had to know would eventually be found out. And then, instead of apologizing for making him think you would be disappointed, you literally tell him how disappointed you are in him. Then, when he feels like you are rejecting him and tells his friends that at least he'll have them as family, you literally reject him and kick him out. Instead of ever asking yourself what you can do to make your son feel more secure and confident, you attack him. You are the a-hole.
Everyone sucks here. I feel like there is a lot of information being left out here. 1. Why was he so nervous to tell you he had not been accepted? Do you parent through fear, anger, and punishment? Or is he a super anxiety-ridden kid? Both? 2. Did you have any conversations with him about what he's feeling or why he did what he did? You don't mention that at all, which is a worry. 3. Why can't he just go to a different school? Have you supported him in visiting colleges and investigating which ones might accept him? Is there a state school or community college where he could start and get his skills up so he could transfer to another school later? 4. For someone who claims to be madly proud of his son going to college, your post is pretty devoid of you trying to help him dig himself out of the hole he created. There's no understanding at all of his position. See point number 1. There doesn't seem to be any understanding at all that it's developmentally appropriate for him to feel closer to his friends than to his family. That's what adolescence is about. For you to be insulted by that is silly. 5. Your post does not reflect any qualms about dooming him to the very life you want him to avoid by launching him into adulthood when he's clearly not equipped for that. Does it soothe you to make him suffer? 6. Have you investigated any alternatives? Family therapy, guided independence, with support from you, individual therapy for you. He's an 18-year-old boy. I'm not sure there is a stupider creature on the planet. His brain is literally only partially developed. Those of us who have raised them know that. Many wonderful adult men that I know remember being 18 and judge themselves as phenomenally idiotic at that point in their lives. He has clearly acted like an a-hole. And he's clearly self-destructive. But he's 18. It seems to me that panic, concern, and a gathering of resources would be a more appropriate response here than rage and excommunication, especially if the goal is the best interest of the child.
1. I would also like to understand, because I had never punished him before for not being able to achieve some of his goals. On the contrary, I continued to support him so that he could keep trying. 2. I asked him, and he had no answer. 3. I did not force him to enroll in any college. In fact, he knew he had my support regardless of his choice. However, I always made it clear that he should have some type of diploma beyond high school to get a good job, so it is not like I was pressuring him to do something he did not want to. 4. No, because that is not what I want. I just want him to have some responsibility because he seems to not have any.
You failed to answer all the questions.
What do you think of these stories? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel to see more interesting videos.